Welcome back to panel 2, the discussion where having gone through how we were going to roll out infrastructure, etc. in the first panel, now we're going to talk about how we're going to monetize this for the industry and what 5G really means for the consumers and users out there. So we have with us a very illustrious group of people here. The guys who run the mobile networks have to make sure that you and I are constantly connected and ensuring that we don't get 384 kilobits per second anymore. And these days we all complain if we get less than 5 or 10 megabits per second. It's quite interesting. But, maybe we'll start off very quickly with regards to what does 5G mean in terms of services for the consumers, for the market? And, why can't we do it with 4G, right? This is the constant conundrum because at the end of the day, how much are we all going to pay for this service, right? Maybe I'll start off with Gokhan as the number 1 operator in the country. What your thoughts are around this before we come back to everybody else.
Thank you very much, Prem, first of all. Thanks for the invitation to the panel too. I'm hoping that, and we've seen it in the first panel discussion, it has been a good discussion, hoping that we can replicate it here in this one. As, again, referring back to the first panel, Afzal was mentioning it's not really the greatest and the biggest thing in the world. It is still great, 5G. Yeah. It is essentially an evolution of the mobile technology, but at the same time, not just the benefits over 4G as it stands today, but what it can do, the things that we know today and the things that we don't even know in the future will happen. Starting with the differences, what it is, definitely it's a higher capacity, higher speed, better reliability, better control on the network, and also definitely better speeds that it will be supplying to all of us. This actually brings the use cases that we talk about. All these different properties of the new technology will, number one, definitely changing the business, the operations, the enterprises, the way we do business in and out of the offices. And this is one of the, many of the cases that we're trialing here in Malaysia and you see around the world are around businesses utilizing the benefits of 5G, especially around creating their own network within their own facilities, campuses, manufacturing facilities, ports and airports. We are going to be seeing a lot of industrial applications of 5G, helping industries, helping companies to be more efficient, to be more effective, to serve their customers better. And this is one of the major ways that we as operators think we can help these industries, we can change the economy and thus monetize it. The higher capacity that 5G brings, actually bringing back the consumer into the question. As our MCMC chairman Doc was alluding, definitely the COVID changed the way we think about the future. We've seen the vast increase of data usage. For example, Maxis Q2 numbers are per user, 21 gigabytes per user per month usage, which is 25% higher than 3 months ago, which is 64% higher than a year ago. When the data usage, the data traffic is increasing this much, you really need a better technology with a better capacity to efficiently carry this kind of traffic, which 5G will come in as the more efficient, and the current estimation is 3 to 4 times more efficient way to carry data for consumers. So it's not only where the revenue is, but also in terms of cost efficiencies, 5G will be bringing to the table. The third one, because of the capacity, we already see the 4G as a complement to home connectivity, home broadband. With 5G, with the capacity, with the speeds, we will be seeing this more and more. 5G as being a complement to home broadband, FWA as we call it. It will be opening up more houses for better connectivity. so that we can actually do better planning for fiber in the future for those homes. So those are the three areas we see as differences versus 4G and what it will be bringing to the operators in the future.
Tan Sri Jamal, maybe you know, add on to this?
Yeah, maybe I should add on to it. To a lot of extent, 5G has been oversold, and to a lot of extent, it's undersold. Oversold because, you know, when we talk about speed and speed and speed and speed, frankly, a huge majority of the applications can be done with 4G or the advanced 4G or LTE advanced. Most applications that we know of runs on maybe to the tune of 30 megabits per second. And 4G can easily do that. Now, obviously, everyone have different experience depending on whether you are nearer to the site, you're away from the site, whether there's a congestion, and whether you use Maxis or Celcom or DG. So it depends. But generally speaking, 4G can do that. But perhaps, you know, it's undersold because, you know, there's the other elements of 5G that are much better than 5G. Latency, for example. A lot of applications that require latency in less than 1 millisecond, that's where 5G comes in. You do remote surgery. Some of the applications that requires AR, VR, that requires that instant second, you know, millisecond of kind of intervention, real time. That's where 5G comes into play. And the number of devices, right? In terms of number of devices, 4G maybe to the tune of 10,000 or thereabouts, and we're talking about more than 1 million devices can be attached for a single application using 5G. That's from the consumer perspective or customer perspective. Internally, from our point of view, 5G is a lot cheaper to do the same thing, to the tune of even 1/5 or 1/10 the price for the same kind of bandwidth to be provided. And also, the other reason is the spectrum that comes along with it. So with the release of spectrum to the tune of 30 to 100 megahertz of spectrum, that makes a lot of difference for us to be able to provide cheaper and better services to the customer. So in that respect, there's a big difference between 5G and 4G.
Thank you, Tan Sri. Albern, would you like to jump in at this point and give us your thoughts around what 5G means for the consumer in terms of products and services?
Yeah, sure, Prem. Thank you very much for having me, and morning to everyone, and hi Tan Sri, Idham and Gokhan. I think when it comes to what's been said, so I won't repeat, and I think for the sake of any panel, let's probably not repeat or re-emphasize. I think what both Tan Sri has said and Gokhan has said is right. I think we got to take this from 2 points of view. One is consumers will always want to use a service. And it's really the service and the trends that will really determine and dictate what we do with 5G going forward, from a consumer point of view and from a business point of view. You will definitely get the efficiencies that, as Tan Sri described in his last few words there. You will definitely get the efficiencies both from a consumer point of view and also for the industry. But you also will be able to do much more with the bandwidth that you are able to get on 5G for sure. The question is around timing a little bit in terms of when would customers want to use this, when does devices become available at a level that is affordable for the various markets globally. And we saw this in 3G, we saw this in 4G. Of course, what we expect is a shorter time frame for this to happen with 5G. But of course, COVID has also given us a different time frame by itself, and sometimes that is also adjusted naturally by itself. So we need to be just aware of the whole context. And while we all agree on complementary services to fiber and an advancement of 4G with the speeds that we will get and the backhaul capability and the efficiencies, we also need to make sure that we stay relevant to the consumers in ensuring that what they want to use it for actually will require 5G. And it will on the B2B side, it will on the consumer side. It's just a matter of which comes first.
Yes, that's a very interesting point, because all of you are pointing to the services coming. We all want it, but there is definitely a runway towards having the need for nationwide 5G coverage, right? And I think the enterprise segment, we can all see use cases for 5G in the early days, but at which point do you think consumer nationwide type coverage requirements are required? Maybe we'll start in reverse order. Albern, maybe to start with.
Idham?
Yeah, so what we have looked at, Prem, we are currently with the government and MCMC, we are looking at basically the 5GDP, right? So we are testing pockets of 5G in various areas as an industry. A couple of things that come out very clearly. It's a lot of collaboration with the industry. It's a lot of cross support and cross identification of what do we actually want to take out. And so we have actually tested many different things as an industry. This is not about DG alone, but also what do we do as a nation for 5G, and how do we actually move Malaysia into that phase. So the pilot, the test that we do actually give us some availability of it. The second part is also looking at, do we have pockets of 5G in the initial launch? And so if you look at the first take-up of 5G, also in some of the more mature markets, you will see that broadband, for example, mobile broadband, FWA are some of the first things that actually take off. And FWA as a complementary or as an add-on on top of what you have now on fiber to the home or on 4G will definitely be beneficial for the consumers. But it's also the B2B businesses and SMEs that will probably be the first ones to actually see the need for this and the application for it. And this is around automation, this is around better monitoring and production capabilities, and examples like ports. The efficiencies that you would get from 5G on port solutions would be much more phenomenal, also in logistics and distribution within SMEs. So I would see not a nationwide 5G rollout from day one, but rather a collaborative way of finding the best way to deploy 5G, pockets of 5G where we would make investments, especially to support the businesses and SMEs and B2B business, and then consumer in areas, of course, in key market centers where it's relevant, and we will deploy it as such.
Thank you, Albern. Idham, you have the opportunity of running a network which has historically had the widest coverage. I think for most of us who've been around from the 90s, it was always about Celcom and the coverage. What do you think 5G brings to the wider, outside of the key urban centers, and what are your thoughts from the learnings of the past from Celcom?
Let's look at a few things. Yes, coverage is important in when it talks about mobile. But when you talk about the 5G in general, then you have to look at in terms of how do you roll out and where's the demand and the application that's going to be used. If the application is today, if you look at our 4G network, at least in the Celcom's network, you see a lot of utilization goes down on social media, goes down on video and YouTube, etc. If the consumer is going to continue to use the network predominantly to watch Netflix, whether you're on 4G or 5G, the ending will still be the same. So it's actually, you don't really need 5G to continue to do what you do today. The question is, what is it that is going to be different? So is it if you're looking at in terms of education, for example, if you look at, if you're going to do education with the 5G instead of looking at textbook or instead of looking at 2G anatomy, you're looking at three-dimensional anatomy, for example, or if you have even application like gaming, for example, if you want to do, if the main drive will be real-time consumer playing games at competition level, then you need that latency to compete against somebody who's connected via fiber. Or if you are an enterprise, for example, if you're looking at robotics and using robotics, an example would be a company like Petronas, for example, if they were to do, which we were helping in terms of network side, to do robotics on their platform so they can manage, do work on the platform without having to send people onto the platform and reduce their manpower. Or even the likes of, if you talk about in the remote area, you have plantations. And Sam Darby wants to use the network and drones and all the analytics and IoTs, etc., for the better to improve their plantations so that it reduce their dependency on foreign workers, for example. So then you have this kind of solution and services that comes in that 5G will come in. So how does it help Celcom having the widest network? Of course, it helps in terms of for us to build and spread out the 5G when it's necessary. But the creation of the services that would need to run on top of the current 4G network is something that needs to be built, right? That's something that the application needs to come and then the network will be built. Most likely, if you look at the 3G and 4G rollout, it always started in the urban center where the demand always come in, and the capacity demand. We're seeing the same in 4G, the capacity demand in the urban area is much higher, so highly likely that 5G rollout will follow the same path. But it does not mean that we cannot serve the rural area when there is a demand or a pocket area that to help a community to do things differently, right? So of course we have that ability.
Sure. And Gokhan, having the benefit of the higher end consumer base within Malaysia, do you see any scope for 5G services to be wanted today as opposed to 2 or 3 years down the road? And what is the willingness of the consumer to pay? What are your thoughts around that?
Sure. As you started alluding, it's a journey. When we talk about 5G launch, it doesn't happen overnight. We will not build 5G coverage all nation in 1 year. I mean, we've done this 2G, we've done 3G, 4G. You've always seen that it is a gradual rollout.
Yeah.
It's a gradual rollout that takes into account demand. And you're right, the demand is starting from the urban areas, is starting with the people who have the means to have 5G devices. Already in our base as Maxis, we have thousands of 5G devices, and obviously these consumers are looking for ways, asking us, demanding us to use their 5G phones on a 5G network. It already started, and we will see this continuing. According to research, the penetration of 5G devices, the speed of penetration or increase of penetration of 5G devices will be faster than 4G devices, as Albern was also alluding to it. So we will see more and more 5G devices connected to our 4G networks, which we need to start providing for this demand. Second, enterprises. Again, we're all really sorry about what happened with COVID, but on the hindsight, we're also grateful that it really, to your point, accelerated things 2 to 3 years. We're seeing a lot of our enterprise customers asking, demanding 5G, at least starting to try 5G in their campuses, at least starting to try use cases so that they can be ready faster than they will be for better efficiencies, for better customer service, really decreasing the cost to serve to their own customers, and to Idham's point, to be able to really manage the negative impacts of COVID as we speak today. So the demand for enterprise is also there. And the third one, the demand for fiber, we've seen starting with March 18th, MCO, more and more homes and more businesses are demanding to be connected with gigabit speeds. We can provide most of them with fiber connectivity, but as you've discussed in the earlier panel, there is still more homes to be connected, and a better way to connect these is to connect them with mobile today, with ideally 5G FWA today, so that we know when the next place to build fiber is. So those are the 3 main demands that is actually already out there today. And it's all of us, the industry and government and the regulator, to decide when it's the best time to start this rollout. Again, to start with, it's not going to happen overnight. Yeah. To start the rollout gradually.
Do you think it happens over the next 2 to 3 years? I mean, at which point, if we think about 4G, we launched it in Malaysia in about 2013, 2014.
13.
And it's taken us now 7 years to hit 92%.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right? What do you think, at which point do you think we'll hit 80% and 90% on 5G?
Again, based on the research, the current expectation globally is a steeper curve than 4G, both in terms of device penetration and also coverage of 5G services. It will be higher than 4G. That is the expectation. That's what I can tell you.
Idham or Tan Sri, any?
Yeah,
Any
I mean,
thoughts on that?
you're right. I mean, 3G, 4G took 7 years or thereabouts to reach the 90 plus penetration. The 5G is a bit tricky. Let me explain why. If you look from the, like I said earlier, the incremental benefit to the consumer, 5G, I'm talking about general consumer, is such that it's so incremental, it's not much different. It's better to upgrade, have more sites, 4G, and in that respect, upgrade 4G to 4.5G and so on, because we can hit close to 1 gigabits per second, although in practice it won't be, but that's the kind of maximum speed we can get. We can serve a lot of customers. So in that respect, the rush for full 100% coverage or 90% coverage is not quite the same as when we were 2G, 3G, and 4G. So in that respect, I support what the YB minister have said, and also MCMC perspective. Let's get a 4G done first. So in that respect, you can argue then there'll be a delay relative less than 4G and 3G. So that's one angle. Now here's the trick here's the thing that we were looking at it from a slightly different angle. Because 5G is more efficient than 4G, and from an operator perspective, and because 5G comes along with it 30 megabits, 30 megahertz, or even 100 megahertz to support one operator, depending on what the spectrum we will get, and especially get the 3.5, and even at the 28 megahertz, we can even get another 100. Because of that, to serve per customer is a lot cheaper than 4G, not because of 5G per se. Yeah. So because of that, 2-3 years from now, it's cheaper for us to roll out 5G than even 4G. That's interesting, right?
Yeah.
And therefore, for the different reason, not because of speed per se, it's better for us to roll out 5G. So in other words, we can expect, so I'm contradicting myself.
Yes.
Right? On one hand, if you forget about the second part, I think for might as well for 5G, you roll out much, much longer than 4G. You don't need to cover. But because of it becomes cheaper and cheaper, it's better to then roll out 5G. So net, the answer is it will be shorter than 3G and 4G. Maybe, I don't know what's the right number, maybe 5 years, maybe 6 years, but shorter and earlier than 3G and 4G.
That's a very interesting.
But before I forget, I noticed one thing. If you talk by example, differences between 4G, 3G and all that, this is 1G, no device.
Yeah.
This is 2G, you know, you have, he was using no, sorry, this is 2G, paper. This is 2G, right? And then this is 3G using the iPad, and virtual 4G. Albern is more advanced than the rest, 4G. Right? But I can argue this is 5G too, because actually it's not a paper, it's a hologram. I don't know whether you all realize that.
Yeah.
Tricked us.
Very interesting perspective, Tan Sri. Albern, your thoughts on this one? How soon?
Yeah, so it has to be a few things that I think what Tan Sri and Gokhan already mentioned, Prem, which is quite interesting. It's actually, it will be quicker. So Tan Sri is right. It'll probably be quicker a little bit. But I'm a little bit traditional on this. And I really think what drives this speed of adoption is really, as much as we would like to think is the infrastructure providers, it's actually the content and the application developers and the use cases that actually come out of it. And hence why we are spending a lot of time as an industry, and DG, even our parent companies are looking at what are the use cases that are actually relevant for consumers, B2B be it, SME be it, or consumers. And then also together with the device manufacturers, it's also very important. Don't forget the device manufacturers. Everything has to come together in order for it to move. Yes, COVID has taken a little bit of a backseat, but I think COVID has also made a lot of businesses aware of the need to digitize. Tan Sri just said I'm apparently the fastest using remote monitoring and communication, but I think there's a lot of use cases which have now naturally come up on the need and the demand that has been created because of post-COVID on how to digitize, simplify, work remotely, efficiency. That will actually be the change agents for faster adoption and a deployment of 5G. And then to be a bit more fact-based, if you look at what Europe or some of the other more advanced countries are doing at this 5G, at least before COVID, they were quite impatient to go off on 5G. They have also slowed this down a little bit to make sure that there is a real demand, and then how do we supply to that demand. And then you will also see exactly what was mentioned here. about a 4 to 5 years range, but it is still shorter than the timelines of 4G, we believe. That will come along with the need from a consumer or a business side, Prem. As much as we like to think it's us, it's not going to be infrastructure guys that are going to be the ones that are driving it. We are the ones that are going to be introducing it and making it simple for people to adopt 5G, but it's going to be a whole group of people that needs to do this.
Maybe if you don't mind,
Yeah, sure.
if I can add, I'm trying to, I guess I'm elaborate what Albern has said. This interesting phenomena of, like always, the ecosystem, right? So if you think about it, there's no point launching 5G today because the devices are not available. I mean, there's only few devices available and they're very expensive in the first place. If you go to any shop, you can really have to ask, where's 5G? Hardly any, right? Secondly, the applications, there are very little applications that really require 5G per se. And the prices of 5G are a lot more expensive today compared to next year, compared to the following year. It always drops, the prices will drop. So there's no reason. But then again, there's a chicken and egg, right? Why would anybody develop 5G specific application if no 5G? Why would people sell 5G devices where there's no 5G network, right? So we come into this vicious cycle. Therefore, we believe that somebody got to break that cycle. In a way, it's up to the telcos, in a way, to break the vicious cycle. So as much as there's not many applications and not many devices and so on, the sooner we bring in the network, the sooner we can get people to sell 5G devices. It all makes sense for people on the street, the dealers and all that to sell. The sooner people develop new application, which is 5G unique and so on. That's the ecosystem we're talking about. So when is the right time? Too early is bad for us too, because there's no business case in the first place. It depends on so many other factors. I guess back to your question, because of that, we feel that the timing's right. We will accelerate the whole ecosystem a lot faster than it would have been for 4G and 3G.
It's a very interesting point because I still remember 17 years ago when I had a Motorola Razr 3, I think. And someone told me, you know what, the future is watching video on your phone. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. The screen is horrible. And look at it today. The iPhone has revolutionized the use case. Right?
Exactly.
And, I suppose let's get rid of one misnomer out there. And I think this is important. Does 5G mean that we as operators can charge more, or is the simple fact that price points are continuously going to come down? I have a big issue with people expecting data yields to rise.
Yeah.
I don't think it happens, especially when the cost is coming down. But what are your thoughts around this? Maybe start with Gokhan?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, there are some misperceptions around pricing and profitability. The easiest tendency is to look at price per data. But in an industry where I just told you about the numbers, 21 gigabytes per month per user, 25% increase in just 3 months, when the data traffic, data usage is increasing this much, it doesn't make sense to look at the price per gigabyte. What we need to look at as industry, as analysts, as the investors is, what about ARPU? And even a better measure of it is ARPA, that we are asking from our customers to pay us in total. And are we able to increase that? That's the real measure. And with 5G, we'll bring two things. One, the efficiencies that we talked about, the higher capacity to carry data and how 3, 4, in some cases 5, 10 times more efficient to carry that vast amount of data, so helps our cost side. Second one is how it helps the ARPA with the solutions that we can sell on top of the 5G. I'm differing from Afzal in the previous speech that everybody needs to do their own part. We are just the dumb pipe providers. We as Maxis, we don't believe that. That's why we have this vision of converged solutions ambition. We see ourselves a mission where we can really help our customers, both consumer and enterprises, to choose among the best solutions. Again, we're not in the business of creating those solutions ourselves because there are global and local companies who are experts in creating those solutions. But more and more, the issue for customers, both consumers and enterprises, the issue is which one do I choose? How do I make it work? How do I keep it and maintain it? And we as operators and as Maxis, having a strong handle on the network side, we believe we can really manage these for our customers. We call it managed services. So the idea is not to create those solutions, but bring all the different solutions from or around the world and locally, have our customers choose those solutions and help them implement those solutions. This is why we've been on a journey to work with likes of Cisco, AWS, Google, Microsoft, with the idea that we can help our customers to choose based on their needs the best one and help them, for example, take the cloud journey, help them move their business onto the cloud with our expertise. So that's where the revenue per customer, ARPA, we believe will come. And we're seeing it already coming in many different shapes and forms already in our business. And 5G will definitely accelerate this. So from a price per gigabyte, let's forget about it. Let's focus on ARPA per customer, both the connectivity and solutions ARPA that we can get from our customers.
Sure. Idham, maybe you jump in?
Yeah, I agree. If you look at, the industry is so commoditized now in Malaysia. People are looking at pricing as one of the bigger criteria. And to some, actually what they spend today, the price of, for example, you take a prepaid unlimited today, people spend more on coffee in one day than what they spend on a broadband to get unlimited services for a week in Malaysia. So the price is there. So the question is whether consumer will pay more in the future. But would you pay more for the same thing that you're getting today? So it's very important. Sometimes when you watch Netflix or you watch YouTube, you get the same services whether it runs on 3G, 4G or 5G. It's transparent to the consumer. So whether they're paying the same thing for the same thing, maybe not. But possibly in the beginning when the experience may be better, but after a while, maybe even some countries, we have seen some countries actually goes back to where it was before. The initial increase in terms of ARPU goes up, then goes down after months, right?
Yeah.
So that we see. But the challenge is what Gokhan has mentioned, is what we have mentioned before, is what then is new. In the era of 3G, when you say 4G is coming, nobody thought of 4G must come because WhatsApp is waiting, right? 4G must come because Facebook and YouTube is going to change, right? It's not. Right? After 4G, like Tan Sri is saying, then when the supply comes, a lot of innovation comes in. So this innovation comes up with new ideas, new services. I think that's where potential new revenue is to come, not just for the mobile operator like us, but also for the partners and the ecosystem. Some, for example, services as such, if you want to watch one of your icon concert in Seoul, you want to watch it with your girlfriend, for example, or the kids want to watch it with their friends, how can they buy the tickets and watch the performance, have a stage side seats and pay 5 ringgit and watch it for among 5 or 6 of your friends? That's potential new revenue, new services that consumer would pay. But just to get the same service, to provide the same stuff, maybe initially, because of the experience is different, but eventually the budget determines and the competition will determine what's the right price. But new things will come. And these new things, my guess is half of it we have not thought about it. And there's a lot more innovation that comes in from the ecosystem, from the partners, from the content providers, from the entertainments that needs to find different way to reach their services to the consumers.
Sure, Tan Sri.
Yeah. So, I just want to expand this thing about what Gokhan and Idham has said. If you think about it, first I agree with you that to charge more for a unit gigabyte, or in this case gigabyte, right? People don't charge megabytes anymore. Gigabyte is going to be, I don't think that will happen. So we've passed that. In fact, it's getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, not the other way around. But the issue, as mentioned by Gokhan, it's not so much of getting revenue per gig. It's getting total revenue from the customer. Hopefully, we are selling more than just connectivity, and we're selling services, solutions, and so on, beyond just connectivity. And I agree, we don't want to be a dumb pipe.
Yeah.
It's hard to be a smart pipe, but minimum is we should be a smart dumb pipe, so that we can at least layer on top, and in terms of solution services, be it consumer or better still the enterprise. So in that respect, that's true. I remember the early days of 4G, when people want to charge more, not because of more gigabytes, but just because of 4G, they want to charge more. And it failed. Similarly, today there are about 92 operators in the world. In about 30, 40 markets, they have launched 5G. About 1/3, close to half, are trying to charge 5G just because of 5G. So far, I don't think it's been successful. Some retracted, but mostly also because of competition, right? Yeah. So Idham and Gokhan might want to charge 5G for the sake of 5G because it's 5G. But if Albern decide to price it the same as 4G, we are all back to square one. We will charge, and the nature of competition is that we will force each other not to be able to charge 5G because of 5G. Yeah. Last but not least, we can also differentiate in terms of quality of service, in terms of speed or QoS, and so on and so forth, which 5G can do a lot better than 4G. So that's yet to be, the jury's still out. We don't know because there's not too many 5G here. But I think that could be another angle to sell and differentiate and get more revenue. But back to your earlier question, to charge more per gig, it's almost impossible.
Yeah, that's the big issue. In fact, I was going to throw it to Albern. I remember 15 years ago when we were traveling somewhere or another, we were talking about quality of service and how, as telco operators, we would eventually be charging consumers on that. And today we're seeing some elements of this come into the markets in the region. What are your thoughts around that? And what are the success stories that as coming from the Telenor Group and being part of the exco of Telenor Group? What do you think? Where do you think we go with this quality of service argument in a 5G world?
Yeah, Prem, I think first of all, let me just comment on just the previous statements. I think if you're going to try and find differentiation through pricing alone, Tan Sri is spot on. I don't think that's possible, and that's already that train has left the station. I mean, it's very, very competitive. There are lots of different offers in the market. Consumers are already sort of looking at 4G in that same context, and we all thought that 4G you could do the differentiation. 5G not going to be any different in my view, and I think you can also see that in various parts. Hence, it comes down to total offerings that we can take to a customer. Be it FWA, for example, be it plus a mobile, plus a service, and maybe plus a security feature that you want to add to know where your kids are. That's probably where we can then add value to a total account of a person. When it comes to 5G and where do we go from here, to your question, I think what we have seen in Telenor and also both in Digi itself is that there's going to be a continuous effort to be creative and innovative, and the need for creativity and innovation within the company to really create that reason to use and the reason to want 5G needs to be there, and that importance has now even become even more greater in terms of creating that need. Otherwise, you will end up with this is just a better internet speed. And why I emphasize on that is you are able then to price maybe differently for either based on services that you take, which is a total account, or based on quality of experience that you want. So, the fiber to home guys have done a great job. With TM time, you buy it based on bandwidth, but you also have mobile plans that are based on speed caps, and then you top up if you want to either get out of that speed cap or get into a better speed experience. So you can do that. However, there is a big word called competition, and that's something that none of us can control. And I think that also comes back in terms of how do we actually make sure that we as infrastructure providers don't get too caught up whether we are a dumb pipe or a smart pipe or whatever pipe we are. I think the whole point is we have the customer relationship. We are the ones that are facing the customers day in, day out. How do we make it our mission to ensure that we provide capability and technology in the bite size that they want, either daily, weekly, by amount, by quality of service, by added value? How do we take that whole thing out to market? That's where the creativity and the innovation lies.
Thank you, Albern. And keeping to your point around the infrastructure provider element of the mobile operators, as we mentioned in the previous panel, only about 40% of the base stations are fiberized. What are your thoughts around increasing the fiberization of the base stations, and how do you then balance the cost of doing that as an industry? I think in Malaysia, we've done a great job in sharing infrastructure, I think since, again, 15 years ago, I think is when it all started. But what are your thoughts about going forward in a 5G world? Do we use more of the fixed line operator infrastructures, or should we as an industry invest in an alternate infrastructure layer in terms of fiberization? What are your thoughts around that?
It's exactly what you just said. And I started off my session saying that when we do 5G now, we really got to think about collaboration. And if you also look at the other markets globally, collaborations, sharing of solutions is something which is very common. In Malaysia, we have done it for a long time, as you just pointed out. Site sharing. The industry has been doing site sharing for many good years. And that's actually benefited the industry in terms of faster deployment, either in building, so that we don't have to do multiple networks in an in-building solution, or we do the same even on towers and sites outside, so that you don't have multiple sites on a roof of an area that you're trying to cover. So that has already matured. The next step of it will be fiber to sites, for example. And for me, it's been very clear, together with our collaboration with Celcom for many good years now, that has been a beneficial move in terms of ensuring that we don't duplicate investments. We leverage and we compete on end user areas, not on infrastructure where we can actually do a lot of sharing and common investments to better protect our margins, but also just be smarter in the quick and faster deployment. And that will continue. So we have also shown that we're very open to work with both the fixed operators, and we continue to do so in looking at working with many partners. We've also exploring both with Celcom and Maxis gentlemen here on stage in terms of doing more on that collaboration. And then that's really the intent, is really how fast can we improve experience of the end user with minimal friction.
Perfect. And Gokhan, maybe if I turn this around a little bit, we've gone out there, Maxis has always been talked about as the quality network. So in a world where we're all collaborating, where we're all taking away that infrastructure differential, how do you position Maxis within that? Or what does all this mean for differentiation in terms of the network quality?
Interesting how you tied the previous question to this one, but differentiation. It starts with the mission that we see as Maxis. And as many of you might realize, we've just celebrated our 25th year in Malaysia. So happy birthday to us, first of all. The month of August was the 25th year. And I know that many of you in this room, including these two gentlemen, have really contributed a lot to Maxis where it is today. And I really
thank everybody
thank
on the panel.
Thanks,
Maxis.
I was looking for this opportunity to thank you both, and now I can do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And from the beginning, Maxis has always been at the forefront of bringing the latest and the greatest technology to the people and businesses of Malaysia, for them to always be ahead, as we formulated as our purpose. And that's where our differentiation starts. We will continue to be bringing the latest and the greatest technology, starting with 5G, for example, and with the objective of providing our customers converged solutions, not just connectivity, but ubiquitous connectivity. That's where mobile and fiber fixed networks come in. Just want to make sure that I get on the record. You forgot to invite us to the previous panel as one of the serious major fixed operators who has 17,000 kilometers of fiber, connected already 410,000 of homes with fiber, number 2 in the country. We will continue to do that. We will continue to provide ubiquitous, doesn't matter fixed or mobile, to our customers, both consumer and enterprise, the internet, the data connectivity that they need anywhere, anyhow. Hopefully always on network, as we call it, because of this convergence. And on top of it, we'll continue to provide our customers a choice of solutions that they need on top of the connectivity, as I was explaining in the previous answer. That will continue to be our differentiation.
Thank you. And Idham, how do you balance this? Again, you've historically been the guy with the best coverage in the country, right? And in a world where you are collaborating with everybody else, where do you see your differential, your ability to differentiate within this context?
Yeah, good question. Firstly, it just reminded me, I was 15 of that 25 years in Maxis, so it's great to be part of that, building up the industry. But Celcom also has been in 32 years in this, building up the infrastructure in the country. And yes, we do have the wide coverage. But eventually, as we see as the market commoditizes, as I mentioned, more and more differentiation needs to go, as Albern has said, cannot be just price. And the network differentiation, eventually, people will catch up and people will caught up. It's even tougher now if you do a lot more collaboration. So do we have fiber? We probably have the same amount of kind of fiber backbone. We are the 3 parties collaborating on bringing the fiber to each other's side, which, of course, besides the cost, also save in terms of time. But we're also collaborating in terms of RAN for 5G, which we were talking about, we announced earlier. So differentiation on at the network level is becoming lesser and lesser in terms of your ability to sustain it for a long time. So there has to be new things that we need to look at. So there's a lot of innovation that we need to look at. How do you keep better innovation? How do you keep better ecosystem with you? How do you bring transforming your company to become a platform company that not just vendors, but partners wants to put their applications onto your network. The easiest for the customer to come and use and stay with you to use the content from either directly from you or from your partners. So a new level of differentiation needs to come. Of course, at Celcom, we always believe that customer experience is important. I think that's becomes the base in terms of most of the decision that we make. But eventually, it needs to go beyond price. It needs to go beyond just network and coverage. It needs to come up with something new. And we will see that in 5G as the thing comes in. I think a lot of it we don't know yet because the kind of applications, the services that it's going to create is still to come out. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for that very interesting discussion. And it's interesting to hear that Malaysia could actually see 5G come sooner rather than later. I was hoping for slightly later, but it looks like we could have a better coverage a lot sooner than expected. In the interest of time, I'm going to have to end the session here. But thank you again very much for joining us today. I think the key takeaway from here is we are going to have this service sooner rather than later, by the looks of it. But we are not about, as an industry, we're working together to deliver this service in a cost-effective way to preserve returns of stakeholders and to ensure that everybody is included in the progress of the nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.